Hi, my name is Hannah. Welcome back to my channel. I am excited to talk about some of these books that I have read recently. My reading is typically a little scattered, and I didn't have any plans on doing Nonfiction November. I know that that is an event that many booktuber are participating in, which is so fun because I do really love nonfiction, but I'm already off to a pretty good start for Nonfiction November. I've read 3 really good nonfiction books this past couple weeks, and I would love to talk about those. I also read 1 fiction book. So am I doing Nonfiction November? Not intentionally, but I'm still excited to talk about some of the nonfiction books that I have read. Now, sorry for my voice. I've had a little bit of a cold going on. But let's start with the fiction book that I read. I read the book Razorblade Tears by S.A. Cosby. And this book was something. So we have 2 fathers, and their sons were married and had a child, and both of their sons were murdered. And these 2 fathers separately were not as supportive of their sons in real life as they would have liked to be. But post-funeral of their children, these 2 different fathers teamed together to find the murderer and solve the crime. And it had a lot of really poignant and meaningful parts in this book. I wasn't quite sure what to expect. It sounded like kind of an interesting premise. I thought it had a lot of good things about, learning to move on and grieving those relationships and how you wish they had been and what you didn't do in life. I think there was a lot to be said for watching these men work through their grief. I thought it was very compelling, could not put it down, very exciting. My only reservations on this is I wouldn't recommend it because it is pretty violent and has a lot of language in it. I wouldn't just give it a blanket recommendation to everyone. I also just don't know if it ever dealt with, I thought that the whole time I kept thinking, these men need to be in jail. This is terrifying that they are free, and I don't know if it quite dealt with that by the end. Maybe some of the, moral ramifications to the way they went about trying to solve this murder. But I really did I was surprised how much depth and meaning I found in this book, and I thought it was pretty interesting. So, if you're interested in the premise and you're aware that there's gonna be some language and violence, these are ex-convicts getting together and trying to solve a murder. If you're aware of that, I think you might enjoy this book. And on to my nonfiction books. So the next book that I read was on the recommendation of Brandon over at Brandon's Bookshelf, and I will make sure to link his channel down below. And this was very good. I read the book Alexander the Great by Philip Freeman, and I didn't know very much about Alexander the Great. I knew a little bit, but I didn't know a lot. This gives a really great biography, his full life, what went on, didn't shy away from the events. Super interesting, and I found it very compelling. I had a hard time putting it down. I wanted to know what happened next. Very fun. I have been reading the Percy Jackson books with my daughter lately, so kind of on theme. We got some of the Greek mythology stuff going on. It was very fun. I enjoyed it though. If you want a biography of Alexander the Great, I do recommend it. It was really just very enjoyable, and I got just a good basis to feel I understood the time period and the norms, and could understand a little bit about what was going on. Now, another 5-star one. So second 5-star, this is my second 5-star nonfiction right here. I read the book Covered with Night, A Story of Murder and Indigenous Justice in Early America by Nicole Eustace. And this I found to be so excellent. This book is specifically following a murder that took place in early America and the ramifications it had on colonizers and the native people's relationships and treaties and interactions. Now, if you went into this book expecting a murder mystery or something, you're not going to get it. You know who did it, you know what happened. It's not mysterious, but it is very interesting to look at, kind of an in-depth look at what we knew about what happened and what that says about Indigenous Americans in early America, their ideas on justice and on grief and on coming together as a community. And I really thought that it was well done. For me, reading it, I found it myself going through an interesting exercise of reimagining what early America could have been had people, the colonists, understood and learned from the attitudes that the native peoples held. A lot of the Native Americans' customs and grieving processes and ideas about justice were more about a focus on emotional restitution and coming together and these reciprocal relationships between communities. And the colonists come in with this idea of individualism and objective justice, and emotion has no part in that. And seeing that clash was super interesting. I really thought it was interesting going right from reading about Alexander the Great to reading about this, because you are getting the colonists coming in and not understanding the culture of the peoples that they're colonizing. And it was interesting because you got a lot of that with Alexander the Great going into different cultures and trying to appease their customs without really understanding or without understanding the significance behind the cultures and customs. It really made me think through what a justice system is supposed to do and why do we have this. And instead of punishing the wrongdoers, what are we doing to build people up as communities, repair those broken ties when an atrocity is committed? What are we doing to strengthen communities and really have that emotional healing? And so, I thought that there was some really interesting stuff on that, and very interesting tale, maybe a little drawn out, but I still really enjoyed it. So I decided to read this next book after hearing it talked about on the channel Read by Fred, which I will make sure to link in the description down below. And this is The Gene, an intimate history by Siddhartha Mukherjee. And I thought this was very good. This is another 5 stars, so 3 5-star nonfiction books all in one video. So it was excellent. So surprisingly this year, I have read quite a few books that have touched on genetics. So I read A Brief History of Everyone Who Ever Lived by Adam Rutherford, and I really enjoyed that one as well. But this book, I think, was maybe better. This was written the same year. Both were published in 2016, and I think A Brief History of Everyone Who Ever Lived went into more depth in certain areas, but this, I feel like, was very comprehensive as well as very accessible. If you want to know exactly when genes started to be studied and what we know now and all of the in-between, this gave so much information in a way that was very easy to understand. So I read The Code Breaker, and I enjoyed that book. It was okay. I didn't really like the writing style, but it did make me appreciate it more because that was written in 2021 and there were a lot more recent developments in the study of genetics. And I feel like it helped continue that story in that gap between 2016 and present, filled in those areas because there have been a lot of developments since then in the study of genes and what we can do with them. So that was, it made me appreciate my past reading more and just really interesting. So I read the other book by this author, the one about cancer, what was it? The Emperor of All Maladies, quite a while ago. and I really enjoyed that one as well. So I'm a fan. He's a professor of medicine, so, and a cancer physician. So I feel like he knows a lot about this subject and has worked in that area and just knows how to kind of break it down in a way that you don't need to have a ton of background, but you're gonna understand it. I did feel like this book was much more accessible than some of the other books that I've read about genetics, but maybe it's because I've already read those other books about genetics, so this just makes it, this was just kind of going over some of the same information. Do I think you need to read The Gene and A Brief History of Everyone Who Ever Lived? Maybe not. They do cover a lot of the same material, but I'm glad that I read both. I feel like I've got a pretty good understanding of some of what's going on, at least, a good base level understanding about genetics and where we are in modern times and what we have gotten to and what the future can hold for the human race. So interesting. I did enjoy it. And those are the books that I read the past little bit. All pretty good, honestly. I'm really happy with my nonfiction picks so far. So happy Nonfiction November. I'm enjoying them. I have a couple others checked out, but it starts to get a little heavy when you start reading all of those big, long, hard-hitting books in a row. So I might go read something fluffy in between. But I really did enjoy these books. So if you have read any of these, please let me know what you think. And also, if you are reading extra nonfiction for Nonfiction November, let me know what your top pick is. Maybe I'll have to throw it on my list. I mean, I'm not great at planning what I read. I just put everything on a long list, and whatever's available at the library, I get the next thing. But it is fun to read a lot of nonfiction. It is one of my favorite genres. Thanks again, and I will see you all on the next one.